Hi, my name is Patrick Kuchio from CITAM ChurchOnline. A New Commandment. Jesus Christ spoke to the disciples in John chapter 13, verse 34 to verse 35. And the Bible says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Now, Jesus issues a command for you and I to love one another. It is not a suggestion. It is not a recommendation. It's a command. Of course, the primary question that must be answered in this verse is, why does Jesus call the commandment to love one another a new commandment? You see, love in itself is not a new commandment. It is actually an old commandment found in the Old Testament, the book of Leviticus chapter 19, verse 8, and in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5 and 13. However, you notice that this new commandment has a new object and a new measure. The object now is love one another. See, the Old Testament commandment was love your neighbor as yourself, Leviticus 19, verse 18. That was the object of love in the Old Testament. But the object of love in the New Testament is different. The Old Testament was love your neighbor as you love yourself. The New Testament, the object of our love is love one another. You see, the Jews had watered down the Mosaic law to a point where they chose whom to love or whom to hate. So for as long as you are not my neighbor, I had every reason not to love you. But if you are my neighbor, I had no choice but to love you. This was a twisted and a watered down approach to the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus Christ comes on the scene and he gives the disciples a new commandment. It is new because it has a new object and a new measure. The new object is to love one another, whether they are your neighbor or not your neighbor. In other words, or put differently, love your neighbor and those who are not your neighbors. This is what makes the commandment to love a new commandment. Why did God command us to love one another? It is by this that the world will sit up and listen when they see us loving one another. You see, you cannot possibly claim to love God and yet hate a fellow neighbor. It is not possible. You cannot claim to love God whom you've not seen and hate your brother, your sister, who you interact with daily. It is not possible. God requires that if you and I are going to have impact around about our spheres of influence, how we relate with one with another is important. We cannot ignore how we relate one with another and expect us to have impact. That is why he says, love one another. So the new object is love one another. What about the new measure? Let's talk about the old measure. The old measure was love your neighbor as yourself, as yourself. So if you really wanted to measure whether you truly loved your neighbor, it had to be selfless, which is good. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. But in the New Testament, the measure shifts from as yourself. The measure is now love one another as I have loved you. The measure is as I have loved you. Jesus Christ has demonstrated to the disciples how he loves them. Later on, the Apostle Paul will make mention of how Jesus Christ demonstrated his love toward us. In Romans chapter 5, verse 8, God demonstrates his love towards us in this: while we were sinners, Christ died for us. So God demonstrates his love toward us by showing us how he loved us sacrificially. Once again, the measure in the Old Testament was loving your neighbor, who is the object, as yourself. And you can say, that is amazing, that is selfless. But God is calling upon us to up the measure of our love, not just as ourselves, not just selflessly, but in addition to selflessly, sacrificially. When we love one another sacrificially, people will stop and pay attention. Just like the people who witnessed Christ die on the cross, whether they were followers or not, they took notice that something extraordinary had happened on that Friday evening when Jesus Christ sacrificially gave up his life for you and for me. I challenge us in the year 2020 to love not just selflessly, but also to love sacrificially. This is the kind of love that God is calling upon us. It's the kind of love that will impact our spheres of influence. Once again, there is a new measure and a new object. The new measure is to love as Christ loved. The new object is to love one another. I know you're there and you're wondering, I don't think I can possibly love as Christ loved. I cannot love sacrificially. Probably you're saying, I can love selflessly, but I can't love sacrificially. You know what? I do understand and I can identify with you. But when I came into a personal relationship with Christ, I came to realize that it is possible, once you're a follower of Jesus, to also love and love sacrificially. See, the word love that Jesus Christ uses here is a Greek word agapao. It is not the word for friendly love. It is not the word for family love. It is not the word for erotic love. It is a word for agapeo love. It's a word for sacrificial love. It is possible as a follower of Jesus for God to give you sacrificial love, where you can allow others the opportunity to go before you. You can allow others and celebrate with others in their successes. You can allow others to actually take prominent place and still be okay. The Church of Jesus Christ needs to demonstrate agape love, the kind of love that seeks the greater good and the utmost good in others. This is the kind of love that our world needs. Men and women who will not just be selfless, but men and women who will also be sacrificial in their demonstration of their love. What sacrifice is God calling upon you to make? At your place of work, at home, in society, in the nation. What sacrifices is God calling you to make? As a follower of Jesus, it is possible to make those sacrifices and still be happy in life. It is possible to make those sacrifices and still be gratified, because this is a new commandment. God cannot command you to do something for which He cannot give you the grace to accomplish. God calls us to walk a journey that He has gone ahead of us, that He will walk with us, and He will come behind us. So when God calls you to walk the journey of sacrificial love, He has demonstrated it. You as His follower, He can give you and will give you the grace to follow through. So I pray that in the year 2020, you and I will embrace the new commandment. Love one another as Christ has loved us. The Lord bless you richly. Please keep in touch with us. We'd like to know how you're engaging with this message on the new commandment. God bless you richly. Please keep in touch with us through our social media platforms that are displayed on the screen. God bless you richly. Have a great week ahead of you.